awesome alternative title that I found on Tumblr. Hi everyone, today I am reviewing The Secret History by Donna Tartt. Secret History follows a young man named Richard who is from a small suburb in California that he absolutely detests. He hates that tiny, boring town. He hates his college, he doesn't like what he's studying, and he has a really unpleasant relationship with his family. In short, he is desperate to get as far away from there as humanly possible. One day he gets accepted to this small private college in Vermont, and although his family doesn't have a lot of money, he somehow gets enough financial aid to be able to go. So he packs up his stuff and moves across the country and starts his new life at this small school called Hampton College. So he's in this new school and it's his first week, and he has this meeting with his advisor. And he mentions to the advisor that he wants to continue studying Greek because it was the one subject at his old school that he actually enjoyed and excelled at. His advisor pretty much says, yeah, forget about it. There's no way that you're going to take Greek. The Greek professor, this man named Julian Moreau, is a huge snob. He handpicks his own tiny class of students and refuses to accept anybody else. It's a really exclusive, stuck-up group that you would not want to be a part of, even if you could get in, which you won't, so don't even try. Now, instead of convincing Richard to stay away from Greek, the advisor only succeeds in making Richard intensely curious about who this professor is and who the students are that he teaches. So he goes to Julian's office and asks to be able to take the class. Predictably gets turned down. Julian tells him, I'm so sorry, but I can only accept 5 students. But then a series of events lead to him getting accepted. And it's really a kind of nosedive for him into this world once he's in, because in order to be accepted into the class, he had to agree to drop all of his other classes so that he could take all of them with Julian and with these 5 other students. And he also had to agree to change his major to classics. So essentially, he was asked to cut ties with the rest of the faculty and with the rest of the student population. So he agreed to pretty much give up his quote-unquote normal college experience for the privilege of being part of this small group of students learning Greek. So during the first third of the book, we follow Richard as he slowly immerses himself into this strange group of people. For one thing, they're all extremely rich, but also they seem to belong to a different era, and they have this air of elegance and mystery about them, and at least to me they seemed a lot older than your typical college student. Richard can't quite figure them out, and he's desperate to be accepted by them, so he actually kind of adopts this new identity in order to fit in. So he acts like he has more money than he really does, and he also uses your typical Californian stereotypes like Hollywood and surfing and all these other things associated with being a Californian that actually have nothing to do with his real upbringing, but he uses them to create an image of what his life was like before he arrived at Hampton. Okay, so I actually haven't mentioned the biggest, juiciest part of the plot. In the very first page of the book, we find out that one of the 6, a young man named Bunny, has been murdered by the other members of the group. So you find out about this in the prologue of the book, and then it sort of goes back in time and it leads you through the events that led up to the murder, and then it goes back to the murder, and then the second half of the book is sort of the aftermath. So that's essentially the plot, and now I'll talk about what I loved about it. First of all, I really have to give Donna Tartt credit for managing to write a novel that was full of suspense for me, even though I knew it was going to happen from the very first page. I found it gripping and impossible to put down, and I think part of this was because of my fascination with the characters. I really wanted to know what their motivations were for killing Bunny, and nothing is revealed right away. There's a whole series of secrets that lead up to the murder, and I just found all of it intensely interesting. I really want to share the first sentence of chapter 1 with you really quickly. The such thing as the fatal flaw, that showy dark crack running down the middle of a life, exists outside literature? I used to think it didn't. Now I think it does. And I think that mine is this: a morbid longing for the picturesque at all costs. That's such a perfect way to sum up the entire first half of the book for me. The morbid longing for the picturesque is everywhere in this book. It's behind Julian's reasoning for why he chose these students as the ones that he wanted to teach. It's the students' motivation for like everything they do. It's the college campus as it's observed by Richard when he first arrives. Because he came from such a bleak upbringing, he observes everything on campus as if it's the most beautiful thing he's ever seen in his life, which it is. So we see everything through his eyes. Every flower, every tree, every building is described gorgeously. I almost felt like I was looking at everything through a rose-tinted lens. There are two twins in the group named Charles and Camilla, whose aunt owns a country house a few hours away from campus that is empty throughout the year, so the group spends almost every weekend in the fall in this house. And it's such a magical experience for Richard because this is really when he starts claiming this new lifestyle as his. The weekends that he spends with the group in this house are so wonderful and gorgeous that you almost feel like it's a dream he's having that he's going to wake up from at any moment. But then the entire time that you're reading about this amazing and beautiful time in his life, you know as a reader that there's this big, ugly, horrible event that's going to happen. And that darkness and ugliness sort of oozes through the pores of all the beauty. And I really loved that. Also, because Richard's friends, and Julian, the professor for that matter, are built up throughout the whole beginning of the book as these almost ethereal, mythological figures, just larger than life. But you slowly realize that they all have their ugly secrets. Every single one of them has some kind of a secret. And you realize that they're not as wonderful and admirable as Richard makes them out to be in the beginning. So I just really enjoy the contrast of like these beautiful, beautiful characters and the beautiful world, and then all the darkness and ugliness underneath it. To me, it was sort of a statement about the dangers of romanticizing people and putting them up on pedestals. And actually, not only the dangers of romanticizing people, but also of romanticizing ideas of the past. It's such human nature to think of decades past as when things were simple and when things were good and when ideas were pure. But I don't want to get too much into this, but a lot of what happens in the book, a lot of the decisions that the people that these students make are direct results of the lessons that they've learned in class with Julian. A lot of it is a result of them taking these lessons extremely seriously, and again, it's painted so beautifully and so like such a magical intellectual environment in the beginning, and then you realize what can happen when you take your obsessions too far. This leads me to the next thing, which is that this novel's really, really smart. Donna Tartt is a brilliant writer, and we're led into some of the Greek classes that they take, and we listen to some of the lectures that Julian exposes them to, and they're very intelligent and profound. In addition, all the students in this class, as well as Julian, speak fluent Greek, so they'll often speak Greek to each other throughout the novel if they're talking about a secret and they don't want to be overheard, and Donna Tartt hardly ever translates for us. I can see how this would annoy some readers, but I personally found it okay because to me it helped establish for me how distant these people were from the world around them, which I thought was a really important thing to learn about them. Also, the book is told from the point of view of an outsider. Even though Richard is eventually accepted into the group, he still remains somewhat of an outsider throughout the entire story. It kind of made sense for me to have her do the same thing to the reader in a way. We're not supposed to have all the answers, and every time that there was something that I couldn't understand, I didn't get the Greek or I didn't get a reference, it helped me relate to Richard and all the times that he wasn't let in. Some people don't like the book because they find the characters pretentious and very unlikable. I get that, and I also found many of the characters unlikable many times, especially Bunny, actually. I hated Bunny. He was an insufferable little shit, and I'm not even going to pretend I wasn't counting down until his death. I never thought the words "die, Bunny, die" would come out of my mouth, but they did, and more than once. And there was a lot to dislike about the other characters as well. But I liked Richard, and I related to him. There's this moment in the book when he's not really sure if he's going to be able to finish college, and he says to himself something like, if any of the other guys don't finish college, it's not a big deal at all to them. They're just here as almost a way to pass the time, and it doesn't hold the same value to them that it does to me. They have more money than they know what to do with, and if they flunk out of college or have to leave for some reason, they're going to have so many other opportunities to make a name for themselves or to do whatever they want, really. They have all these safety nets all around them. But this is my one shot, and if I don't make it through college, then I really blew it, and I'll go back to being a nobody, and I'll have to go back to the life that I had before I got here. When he said that, I really related to him a lot. I felt like I understood exactly what he meant and how he felt in that moment. And in all of the moments throughout the book where he has thoughts of not measuring up and not being accepted by the others or truly belonging to the group. This book wasn't perfect, and I had a few minor issues with it. For instance, it took me an embarrassingly long time to figure out what time period it took place in. For a while, I thought it took place in the 20s. Spoiler alert, it does not take place in the 20s. But besides a few minor things here and there, I found it so smart and so beautifully written and so gripping. I honestly feel like I spoke a lot and I did not cover nearly everything that I wanted to talk about. I will absolutely read everything else by Donna Tartt. She's definitely earned my admiration with this one. If you read it, I would love to hear your thoughts. If you hated it, let me know. I just find this book so intensely fascinating to discuss with people, and I don't really care what your opinions are as long as you have them. So feel free to tell me that you really hated it. Alright, that's all for now. Thank you for watching.